Welcome to the Brand Wise podcast, where we talk about the big branding moves that business owners are making and the why behind it. I'm your host, Jess Freeman, here to help you be wise and be bold. So excited to be talking with Zoie today. We're going to be talking all about brand messaging and all that kind of fun stuff. So thank you for being here,
Of
Zoie.
course.
To get us started, can you just tell us about you, your business, your background, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Zoie Callihan. I am the founder of Lexicon Copy Co., which is a little founder-run copy studio that provides like a full service copy experience from brand messaging all the way down to like post conversion deliverables and stuff like that. But before I left my corporate job to be my own boss, I was in a software, one of the prominent software as a service companies for the health, wellness, fitness, and beauty industries for about 11 years in a variety of capacities. So I have kind of seen a lot of small businesses from a very unique perspective that I feel like not a lot of people have had the pleasure of observing them from.
Yes.
Um, and I loved it, but I went to school for English. And so once I realized that I could have a business with an
Mm.
English degree, that was a done deal.
Yes, yes. And it's funny because when we were talking about having you on the podcast, I actually didn't even know that about you with your background with the software
Mhm.
and like in the health space. And so I was like, well, even better.
I know.
Like, love it.
Thank you so much
So,
for pivoting directly into my area of expertise. I
no
appreciate
problem.
that.
I love it. Okay, so diving into all the brand messaging and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So how do like health and fitness business owners start even like shaping their brand to like stand out? Because I feel like
Mm.
a lot of my clients and just people that follow me are like, I'm just I'm just a dietitian. Like, I don't know.
Oh.
Like not like downplaying what they do, but they're like, I don't
Yeah.
know, like I'm the same kind of dietitian that she is. And like, yes, I have my
Hmm.
niche, but they don't know how to create this recognizable brand voice. So what advice, like talk us through that. What advice do you have?
So health and wellness businesses are very interesting because they come in kind of several flavors, right? So you have the
Mm-hmm.
person they are their business, like a dietitian, they are the service that they provide. And then you have the person who has like a brick and mortar, like a studio that people go into. And that's it's a whole different type of thing. And then there's the type of person who wants to open up like a chain of businesses. So you want to like, depending on what type of health and wellness business you approach it kind of differently. So if you are someone who is your own business, the important thing about your brand voice is that it should give someone the impression of what it's going to be like to work with you.
Mm.
So, a lot of people, which is hard, it's really hard to be introspective about what you sound like, what you stand for, that type of a thing. But the place that you start with any of those three types of businesses is by kind of doing some soul searching and digging down to why you started doing this in the first place, to determine both the people you want to work with, which obviously you should know if you have a business, but kind of your values, right? And
Mm-hmm.
from there, that determines the way that you talk about what you do will stem from why you started doing it in the first place. So
Mm.
if you're a solo service provider like a dietitian, that's a good place to start. If you
Yeah.
have a brick and mortar, it's like similar but with a twist. You want
Mm-hmm.
to start your brand voice so that people from interacting with your content or your brand online get an expectation for how it's going to feel like to walk through the front door. Because if you
Mm.
sound super different on paper than it is when they walk through the front door, then you're going to have a very disenchanted clientele mighty quick.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, too, you probably already know kind of what you stand for before you opened your front doors. It's just taking a step back to think about that and get it
Yeah.
down on paper and build how you talk about what you do from there.
So how like kind of going off of that, because I follow so many and work with so many in this space, they sound the same, the
Hmm.
messaging is very similar. So how do they like defy the genre, get out of, the sameness, but
Hmm.
still saying authentic? Because I think a
Right.
lot of, I mean, I just worked with somebody that was like, I don't even know how to write that actually sounds like me.
Oh, when it comes to writing and sounding like yourself, it's tough if you're not a writer
Mm-hmm.
because, as you're a health practitioner, you're very, very good at what you do, but you're maybe not so good at writing about it. So, first of all, it's good to bring on someone with a second pair of ears
Mm-hmm.
because think about it, like your best friend can probably do a spot on imitation of you, but you don't realize that you use the same, like the way that you talk about things or the subtle turns of phrase and things like that you use. So if your best friend was also like a trained messaging strategist, just having a session with someone like that who can listen, let you talk, and then kind of assimilate that and repeat it back to you, super duper valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's all it takes is just being able to talk to someone who is outside of you and can tell you how you talk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're in a place like, so that's one scenario where you're like, I know that I need to write, but I feel like it doesn't sound like me. Work with someone who isn't you, who can tell you what you sound like, and that's super duper clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a business who, like, let's say you're just a little bit bigger, you've got a team and you've got like a full brand going on instead of just being like a solo trainer, and you're wanting to sound different from other businesses in your industry, first of all, learn what everybody else is sounding like and
Mm.
decide like what about their experience and your experience is the same, because I bet that there are differences in there that you don't even realize,
Mm-hmm.
so even let's say you're a Pilates studio and like you have a Pilates studio that is very like the vibe is calming and refreshing and like a place that you go to recharge and rebuild and build strength. That's a very, very different type of brand voice. But let's say that your Pilates studio is about being revitalized and energy and, rebuilding after an injury and gaining strength. You can totally reflect that in your brand voice. And the whole thing about building a brand voice and trying to sound different is not just being different for the sake of being different, but
Mm.
having the right brand voice that will attract the people that you want to work with. So
Mm.
there's no sense in being different if the people that you want to work with don't like different. So
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a really good note. Not just because you want to sound different, but it's really truly going to attract the right
right.
people. And I know that from experience, from conversations I've had, that sometimes people are like, I just don't know how somebody else is going to be able to capture what I sound like. And I don't, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's the same way that other people don't know how macronutrients work
Oh.
and
Mm-hmm.
how to program a workout. Like
Uh-huh.
something that is so second nature to you is so second nature to a messaging strategist, a copywriter, like
Mm-hmm.
it may not make sense in your brain because you're not a professional copywriter. You're not a professional messaging strategist. Like of course in your brain, yeah, you're like, how is anybody else going to be able to capture this? um
100%. As someone who's been like basically a proud couch potato for most of her life and recently got into, moving her body and building her strength and stuff like that, it's I'm so impressed by everybody that that's their zone of excellence and their zone of
mm,
expertise. It's for sure not mine. However, good news, language and
mm-hmm,
putting together verbal identities and assimilating all of that, that's where my brain works. So please
mm-hmm.
continue doing what you do because I'm gonna need you, but I but I can do what I do very well too.
Yes, yes, I get a similar question with like, but how do you take the ideas in my brain and like turn it into a website that I like I cannot conceptualize that. I don't understand, like, how does this work? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I just, it's what I do. Like, I don't know. The same way that you're able to come up with a meal plan or come up with like a nutrition coaching program, like to
Mm-hmm.
understand all the science behind it.
Right.
It's like we all have this different, I almost like want to say we all have this like different science in our brain
Mm-hmm.
that like yours is tailored to, you know, nutrition or fitness. Yours, Zoe, is tailored to messaging and copy, and mine is
Mm-hmm.
tailored to design. Like we just see differently and our brains work a little bit different, and we just have to remember that like just because you are don't understand, like don't have the skills or whatever to like get the brand voice out doesn't mean that someone else can't, because we
I
just
100 I 100% agree. I like, and I
mhm,
really like what you said about the science behind it, because I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to writing a website or creating content, they think or they feel like it's just writing. Like if you're a
mm,
good writer, and sometimes a lot of people who, if they have that dual skill set of like, oh no, I'm a good writer, um, they think that that's all that it takes. But it's really a very complex process, just like putting together a meal plan, understanding the science behind it. You can do it enough so that it starts to feel second nature, but there really is a lot of psychology behind doing it in a way that's going to represent your business well, attract the type of person that you want to attract, like address their concerns. Like it is so much more complex than it looks on the surface. It's not just about like, oh, how do I phrase this? You know?
mhm, mhm. Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned psychology because that was gonna be like one of my next questions.
Oh, look at us go.
Look at us. Because I wanted to talk about buyer psychology and like
Mm-hmm.
people, you know, being on our website. So, how do our people build stronger connections, build that trust? Obviously, like, and then hopefully convert people, like using psychology. Because obviously, like, I know there's psychology in the copy and then the design, but I think that's something that a lot of people miss, don't even realize is there, or they don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to actually like utilize it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Again, this is one of my favorite topics, one of my favorite questions. So, the mistake that every human being makes is thinking that other people think and make purchasing decisions the way that we do. Makes sense in our brains, so it makes sense in their brains. But that is patently false. so, so much smarter people than I am have actually broken down the way that people make decisions into the four buyer types. And once you start learning about those different buyer types, it makes a lot of sense. It sounds very like psychological and high level, but once you start breaking it down, you'll realize that you are or know people in those four buyer types. So, for instance, I'm just going to list them off really quickly. There is analytical, there are drivers, there are amiables, and there are expressive types of buyers. The analytical types of buyers are the people that need facts and logic and details. You can't just paint them a pretty picture of how things are going to go. You need to give them all the details and let them make their own decisions. The driver type buyers are people who just need to know like the end result. What's this going to do for me? Like give me the don't bog me down with all the details, just show me where I'm going, make me see it clearly. That will help me make the decision. The amiable type buyers are the people that need to feel warm and fuzzy about you and your values. They need to feel seen and understood and like protected and part of a community. And then your expressive buyers are the people that need to like envision a better life with your service in it.
Mm,
So once you think about it, like once you get to know the type of person that your ideal client is, you know the type of language to use or the type of content to create that will speak to them. And sometimes your ideal client is multiple, it's not always just one. But you can understand why, if you have a ideal client who really is coming to your fitness studio, for instance, because they want to be part of a community, if you're breaking down facts about recovery rates and like your cutting edge technology and stuff like that, you're going to lose them. That's not what they're looking for. So, and it's easier than you think to find out who your ideal person is. All you have to do is ask them. Just think of
mm,
one person that you think, oh man, I really loved working with that person. If all of my clients were like this person, I would be the happiest business owner in the world. Talk to them and ask them why they decided to work with you or what they look for. You're going to understand so quickly how they make decisions. And then you can provide the type of information or the type of experience that's going to make them know that they are right where they need to be with your business.
I love that. I'm like already envisioning. I'm like, just create like a little Google form even,
Oh, yeah.
and just send it out to like a few of your clients,
Mhm.
because I know I can already hear people being like, I don't want to bother them, or they
Nobody clicks on
won't.
surveys. No one answers
Yeah, but
things.
send a personal email or even a
Right.
DM, like, and if the Google form feels too technical or like,
Mhm.
unpersonal, then that's not a word. Impersonal is what I was trying to say. Then
It's early. I give that one
uh,
a pass.
then just like have a conversation. I mean, I literally just finished up a project last week with a client, and I mean, I love most of my clients, but she was like so good, and I could tell, I was like, she's someone I could like ask some questions
Right.
to. And so in Slack, we just launched the website, and I was like, hey, can I ask you some questions? Can I ask you like, and mine wasn't about like buying decisions. It was kind of like the client process and whatever, but it was
Right, right,
just,
right.
it was, she was so willing because we had such a good experience. And
Mhm.
but I know, like, even if it was like a month from now and I was like, oh, can I ask you some questions, like,
Mhm.
it's not like I'm asking, 12 questions and doing all this market research, but it
Mhm.
was just like one or two simple questions that she was really willing to answer. And honestly, even I actually do have a question in my testimonial form that is like, why did you decide to work with me?
Mhm.
And so I think that I'm like, now I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm gonna have to go back and look at those to like figure out the I off
Uh-huh.
the top of my head, I think mine are analytical and drivers.
Oh, I think so
Um,
too. Health professionals are very
yeah,
science and fact-based.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So I
mhm.
was like, I don't really feel like they want the warm and fuzzies. I mean, they want to know who I am and like trust me. I
It's
don't see the warm and fuzzies really.
mhm.
So when you were listing them, I'm like, I think they're analytical and drivers. So now I'm gonna have to go. I
See,
have to go look.
test the theory, see if you were
Test the
right.
theory. But I'm glad when you were like, and it's not that hard to find out. I was like, great, because I was about to ask, like, how do we find out? Because I know some people listening would
Mhm.
be like, I have no idea. So
Mhm.
I
And I
think
don't have the
just,
bandwidth to try and set up this whole scientific study. You don't
yeah.
have to. It's just honestly, it can be as simple as like send me a voice note. I'm going to ask you a question. Send me a voice note back. And like the people that you work with, I'm sure are very passionate about what they do and very good at what they do. And their clients really appreciate and trust them. So it's not that big of
Mm-hmm.
a lift to say, hey, I want to make sure that I'm serving people really well. Can I ask you a question to make sure that I'm finding the right people that I can help?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
after you
It's,
after you've changed someone's life when it comes to their health and wellness, they owe you a big one. So,
yes. Yes. And it's just like one question. So I think they'd be more than willing to answer. Now, you kind of touched on this, that like some people might be more than one. But
mhm,
what about like if someone's like, okay, I talked to 10 different people and they were all different. I mean, obviously there's only four options, but
mhm,
like if it
mhm,
was almost like an even split between
mhm.
them, what do they do with that?
Okay. So, a part of my background that I didn't mention earlier is that before I've lived like three different career paths, which is great to make me a very well-rounded person. But I went to school to be an English teacher, in which we learn about different types of learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have surveyed like ten people, and first of all, make sure that these are like 10 people that you really would like to work with again, not just
Mm-hmm.
10 random people, because if you don't need to be for everybody. In fact, you shouldn't be for everybody. So
Right.
if you're doing this research, make sure you're talking to people who you're like, oh yes, these are my people, and you get a variety of different answers. Then in your content and on your website, you need to make sure that you have information that caters to each of those different preferences, even those each of those different buying decisions.
Mm.
And the nice thing about that is that people will never see every piece of content that you put out, and they're probably not going to read every single word on your blog or your website. People are very good at taking what they need.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're writing something or putting something together to help people understand if they are for you and vice versa, you can appeal to those different types of styles, and people will naturally gravitate towards what they need. So let's say you have like the two polar opposites. You've got your fact-based people, and then you've got the people who just like want to see their life with the benefits of your business as part of it. Your website can contain a section that talks about your methods where you break it down, you cite facts and figures, but you can also start your website with an anecdotal story, or kind of like we call it in the messaging business, we call it like a transformation piece
Mm-hmm.
about the results that people can expect to see once they finish working with you. Porque no los dos? You can have both.
Yes. I can definitely see, even just thinking through like my own sales page and clients' sales pages and stuff, like there are little bits of both. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
doing this research, if you don't already like automatically know or haven't already done the research, like it may just be adding some things or tweaking some things,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily like, oh, I have to like redo my entire website to like cater to this. I mean, you might, I hope not, but I'm hoping like for most people it might just be like, oh, okay, like my people are very analytical and I just need to like add some
Mm-hmm.
more of the like hard facts in here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important to remember, is just it might be
Yeah.
just be a few tweaks, like don't feel like it's going to be this huge undertaking,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully.
Well,
So,
another thing to think about is where people are in the process of making a decision about signing
mm,
up with someone like you. That will really determine not only like the type of content, but how much of it they need. So if someone is like a lifelong Pilates student, they very much know what's out there. You don't need to do, even if they are little miss facts and figures, you don't need to do a lot of deep breakdown because you know that they already have a lot of background. That's kind of the official marketing term for that, is like the buyer journey. Where are they in the buyer journey? Do they not
mm-hmm,
know anything about you, or do they already pretty much know everything about the type of business that you are, and they're just trying to make a decision as to which Pilates studio they go to? Um, so, if you, depending on where your ideal person is in that phase of their journey, you may just need to add a little bit. Or if they don't know much about having a dietitian at all, you may need to produce a lot of content over time that educates people about what a dietitian can do and the types of changes that they can make in your life. And people will slowly consume that. They'll slowly realize, oh, yeah, you can help me. And then they'll come around to you. So,
mm-hmm.
those are the two things, figuring out like what type of information they need to make decisions, and then how much they already know.
Yes. Yeah. My strategy brain is like because I'm like, you have these like posts about if it's someone who's like, I have no idea like how to work with a dietitian or what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you have these kind of like intro posts. They're pinned at the top of the blog page. So it's like a start here section. So they don't
Yes,
get
yes.
lost in the feed
Mm-hmm.
with, 75 other blog posts. And then like, or
Exactly.
we could link them on the about page. Like, I'm like, making up this fake strategy for somebody. But it's like that's where the strategy comes in. Like we need the messaging, but then it's not just having it exist on the website, but making
Mm-hmm.
it obvious. Oh, you could start here if you find that a lot of people are like, what is happening here? So,
I think a lot of people too, like obviously having a health and wellness business is in and of itself a full-time job. And so when it
mhm.
comes to the marketing and content and the bringing people through your door side of things, it feels like a whole nother full-time job, which
Oh yeah.
fair, it literally could be a whole nother
Yeah.
full-time job. But I see a lot of, and especially when I was working directly with health and wellness businesses at the software company, I see a lot of people who just get overwhelmed because they don't know what to do or what to say or what to post or what kind of information to put out or content to create. And so understanding kind of the psychology and the strategy behind it helps so much, because you're not
Mhm.
just thinking like, oh man, what do I share today? I guess I did a warm up routine. I guess I could post that. Like, if you know the people that you're trying to talk to well and know what they need to hear, then your content never feels aimless. which
Mm-hmm.
is good because you're not just throwing stuff out there to see if it sticks, which is a big energetic drain. You're like, okay, I know they need to know this. I know they'll benefit from this, so I can share that. So
Mm-hmm.
helpful.
Yes, yes, so much. Kind of piggybacking off of that, I know, with the like, oh, I'm just gonna like throw this out there, see if it works. Another thing that I hear a lot of like marketers talking about and like platforms, their tagline, the phrase about like cutting through the noise. And
Yeah.
like, and we do, like what we were talking about earlier, we want to be different, but how do we? Because it is a crowded space.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of online entrepreneurs, there's lots of dietitians, and how do we get through all the noise, especially with these stupid algorithms? I know that the people in my space are just frustrated with like,
Right.
I feel like no one's hearing me. I feel like I'm just another voice out there. Like, what advice or strategies do you have? Like, have you seen anything that's like working for your clients to actually like stand out in their niche?
Yeah, it's so funny. You're so right. Cut through the noise. We love saying that. And I'm not going to lie, there's a page on my website that says cut through the noise. So I have to.
It's fine. Like, but I didn't mean a slam against the phrase. It's just
Oh,
like
no, but I know
the
what you mean.
we, yeah, but it's like, how do we? Like,
Like,
how do we actually do this? Because it
sounds
feels
great,
like,
but how?
yes, yes. So teach us.
I mean, obviously, there's many different ways that you can go about cutting through the noise, but since I am the messaging side of things, like that's
Hmm.
my specific skill set. And what I've noticed, obviously, like to get just a teeny bit meta about everything, we have so much content that we are bombarded with constantly. People, because there's a limited amount of knowledge when it comes to marketing and strategy, there's a lot of people copying other people. So you've got
Hmm.
trends that rise and fall, and there's a lot of sameness. So the way to really just like narrow down and speak directly to your people, which is what you need to do. People are craving novelty,
Mm.
and people are craving being seen and understood.
Mm.
So that's kind of why I love my own tagline saying defy genre, being like, don't be afraid to do something that's different if you know that your people will like it. So
Mm.
you don't need to be crazy. You don't need to do something just for the sake of being different, but it's okay to pull inspiration from untraditional sources. So
Mm.
like for instance, if you see a lot of like in studio videos and tutorials, and those are like a dime a dozen, and you're scrolling through a bunch of reels and it's just video after video of this person in their studio. If you're wanting to cut through the noise and speak specifically to your client, think about what their day-to-day life is, what they're interested in, what's going to be applicable to them. And let's say that they're home with their kids. What if you set that reel in a different background? What if you did it with kids in the background in a space that someone's like, wait a second, that's my living room. That's my
Mm.
life. You know, cutting through the noise is not necessarily just doing something crazy for the sake of being different, but it's being so hyper specific to your clients that they stop and go, oh, wait, that's me, you know?
Hmm.
And don't be afraid to do crossovers with other industries, things like that. If you can dip into other aspects of people's life and combine more of their interests in one specific post or blog post or things like that, anything to show your clients that you really know them specifically and personally, and anything to change up what they might be seeing and might be kind of like numb to on
Hmm.
their feeds or in their, wherever they're getting their tutorials if they're on YouTube.
Yeah. I really like that idea. And I have done that a little bit, even with my own content. Like, we all, well, maybe not all, but there's lots of B-roll, like reels with people just like
Mm-hmm.
working or, I mean, there's all kinds of B-roll.
Mm-hmm.
And I have started occasionally like doing like, oh, I'm meal prepping and that's my B-roll, or I'm at the
Mm-hmm. Oh
gym and
yeah.
like, and because that resonates. And I do notice, I mean, it's not like a blowing it out of the water difference, but I do notice a little bit of a difference when
Hmm.
I use that B-roll versus just me at my desk, you know?
Right.
So, and when I niched down like fully last year and started getting hyper specific in my messaging,
Hmm.
like you said, I noticed a big difference. Just
Yeah.
one, marketing was easier. I was getting more engagement. Literally just a week or two ago, um, some like a personal trainer commented on my reel and was like, "This messaging," with like the clapping emoji, and I was like, I
Like,
mean,
noted.
when someone like you're not even like a messaging strategist or a copywriter, like you're a personal trainer, like commenting on the messaging, and I was like,
Hmm.
all right, okay, I'm doing something.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think being really specific always helps.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you
So
mentioned that.
what we were talking about before about like the different types of businesses, there's like the solo service provider, and then there's the person that's building a brand or a brick and mortar. Cutting through the noise is going to look different for
Mm-hmm.
those two people. So like for instance, you are a service provider, so the way that you cut through the noise is getting very, very hyper specific. And the question that you can throw out to kind of help you narrow down is the so that. That's the phrase. So
Mm,
I help people do blank so that they can do this, so that they can see that result. And if you keep saying so that enough till you get very, very specific, then you're not just saying, do fitness so that you can have a stronger core. It's not just having a stronger core, it's having a stronger core so that you can, you know, pick up your kids without a problem, without throwing your back out, or so
mm-hmm.
that you can dance all night and not be sore the next morning. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're a solo service provider, getting that specific and talking about like being very applicable to their lives, that's going to cut through the noise.
Mm-hmm.
For if you're a brand, it's very interesting. You got to get a little bit more meta, but the example that I always use is kind of a silly example, but think about Ben and Jerry's. Okay, they're
Okay.
ice cream,
Mm-hmm.
but Ben and Jerry's most popular flavors are when they paired with the Tonight Show. Those are two things
Mm-hmm.
that don't go together. Ice
Right.
cream and the Tonight Show. They don't go together. But the very smart folks at Ben and Jerry's knew that their people loved sitting on their couches watching the Tonight Show. They made a crossover. All of a sudden, people are like, "Hey, wow, yeah, that is me. That is something that I love." And the pairing of the two made them sit up, pay attention. Now they're crazy popular. Now that's Ben and Jerry's thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a brand, if you can combine two things that wouldn't normally go together, but that your people love, that's what's gonna take
Mm.
off and be crazy. Think about like when Zumba first started and it was like, what? You mean I can work out, but it's also dancing, but it's also my favorite songs? I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
so if
Yes.
you're a little bigger than a solo service provider and you're looking to differentiate yourself, don't be afraid to try unusual pairings that will speak to your people.
That's a good thing to think about. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, no
Um,
problem.
okay, so we've talked some about brand voice and brand messaging. Can you talk to us about like brand voice guides and like
Mm.
how to have one that's like actionable and like practical? Now, I know this might be hard to like DIY, and I personally would be like, you just need to like hire Zoe or
I'm
somebody.
very open to that. That's also always a good option.
But like, what if they're like, I just maybe it's not even a full guide, but it's like a
Hmm.
checklist or something. Like, how do we have something that's really practical instead of like, cool, I have this PDF on my
Hmm.
computer that like I don't ever open.
Yeah. Yeah, you're speaking to my heart because I work very hard on those PDFs and I don't want them to end up in Google Drive purgatory forever. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So, again, my answer is going to be different versus when you're working just with yourself versus if you have a team. And if you're working for yourself, I think the most actionable parts of a guide are some of the things that we talked about. So, like understanding who your people are and what they're drawn to, for instance. So when I put together a brand voice guide, it's not just about what they sound like in writing. It's actually much more the foundational things.
Hmm.
So having it's crazy how clarifying and illuminating it is to have written down things like your mission and your vision and your values and the type of people that you want to work with, what their, again, like their stage of awareness in the buyer journey is, what type of a buyer they are, and also your positioning, which is just a fancy marketing way of saying like how you specifically serve them. Having all of that written down somewhere that you can reference when it's time to sit down and you're like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. I don't know if this is going to land or not. That's super duper helpful because it takes so much mental energy, even for me, a marketer, to pull that out and have it in the front of my brain when I'm trying to create something that's going to serve my audience. If you're just a business of one, things like that are going to be really helpful to have written down somewhere for you to reference instead of having to think about it for the first time.
Hmm.
Now, if you are a slightly bigger business and you aren't the only person creating your marketing, all of those things are going to be just as important. But then you start getting into a little bit more of your voice and tone to make sure that no matter who is writing for your business, it sounds like the same person. So, for instance, it's helpful to have lists of things that you would say and you wouldn't say. Like, do we refer to our customers as clients, as customers, as, community members? Those types of things, so that when you hand it off to someone who's putting up a post for you and you're off teaching a class somewhere, you don't open up your phone later to go like, what the heck, this doesn't sound like me at all.
Mm-hmm.
Writing down kind of like your conventions as far as how you refer to your services and things like that, that people can reference and make sure that they're using uniform language. That's going to be the extra piece. So definitely make sure that everybody that works for you is on board with, your values, your mission, so they can speak to it eloquently. Definitely make sure that you have written down what your positioning is, so that when just practically when someone behind your front desk is trying to explain what makes your business great and how you serve people, they know,
Mm-hmm.
they're not just like, oh, Pilates is just really good for you in general. No, 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 it's not that. It's we serve like Pilates for busy working moms,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that everybody on your team knows exactly how you serve your audience. And then also making sure that you all talk about it in the same way so that your branding and your marketing doesn't sound disjointed depending on whoever is behind the keyboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I I think that's the one thing a lot of people think of the brand voice guide as just like, oh, okay, like it's cool to reference, but especially for those with like a team,
Mm-hmm.
even I'm thinking of like I have some clients who are all virtual. They don't have a physical like storefront or anything, but they
Mm-hmm.
have like an admin person and multiple
Yep.
coaches or like whatever. And I'm like, they need that too, because even if they're not necessarily like marketing for you, they should still have that information because who knows who they're DMing or communicating with or you know.
Exactly. They need to
Um,
know what you stand for and how
mhm.
you serve your people, even if they never write anything marketing related ever.
Yes. And we've all seen the I feel like local businesses, not even health and fitness, just local businesses in the community.
Mm-hmm.
It's the posts on Facebook. One time they're being funny, then they're serious, then it's like, who did an 8-year-old write this?
Someone's 18-year-old niece or nephew was in charge of Facebook posts for this week before they went back
Uh-huh.
to school.
Uh-huh. And you're like, what is happening on this page over here?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this. You have shared so many good things. I have one last question before we wrap up,
Please.
and this might be like hard to choose, but like if someone listening was like, okay, what I need to do something like this with so much goodness. What is one actionable step that like you would recommend that they start with?
I'm going to say it's a two-parter,
Hmm.
because the foundation of anything is getting to know your customers really well and getting to know yourself really well, because a really
Mm.
successful business is where those two meet. So take a step back, do some soul searching like we talked about, and start thinking about the values that dictate how you run your business, because those are very important, non-negotiable. It's really important to have those clear in your mind. What are you trying to accomplish for your people? Why did you start this? What are your non-negotiables? Make sure you have that clear. And then go talk to your people. See
Mm-hmm.
what they need, what they're looking for, what they're struggling with, because everything good and productive comes out of knowledge and research. So figure out yourself, figure out your people, and just from the exercise of taking time out to do those things that you wouldn't necessarily take time out to do, it's going to give you so much clarity about why, like, who you are and who you serve, and from
Mm-hmm.
there it's all uphill from there.
Okay, so now that we've all fallen in love with you and we're just gonna like
Stop.
fill the client roster, hopefully, where can we connect with you online, learn more about you, hopefully hire you, all the fun stuff?
Well, I would be a disgrace to my profession if I didn't tell you to go to my website, which is lexiconcoffee.co. But I think a good place to stay in touch with me is my newsletter, which is the Lexicon Gazette, which is where I get
Nice.
into a lot of the, like, a deep dive behind marketing and how to make it practical, kind of debunking some of the trends that we see, how to, like, make sense of a lot of the things that we see so that it's not just noise. That's really valuable. But also, like, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads. That's where some of my rawest ideas come. So come find me, come hang out.
Yay! Awesome. I will link to all that in the show notes so you guys can go connect with Zoe. But thank you again for being here. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Jess. I appreciate you.
Are you a squiggle or a square? Go to jesscreatives.com/quiz to find out where your brand ends up and find out what a square or squiggle even means. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to leave a review or share it on Instagram, and tune in next week for another episode.